Hello, everybody. Welcome to Legend Lore, the show where John and I sit down and talk about world-building bullshit for normally an hour, but tonight we're starting a little early and we're going to do about a half an hour little ditty. And John, you've chosen a wonderful topic for us tonight. Why don't you go ahead and share that with the wonderful people?
Alrighty. Today we're gonna talk about inspiration, particularly for making your world or what have you.
Oh, all right. We have a random viewer from the server. Don't worry about it.
Yep, no, not a problem. But yeah, so if you want to go for, I mean, I know particularly last session you had something that you outright told us where you got the inspiration from, and since it's going to be a little bit before we can talk about that in full, I figured just talking about your inspiration for that would be good.
So you're referencing the Berserker Paladin, correct?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah. So I took a lot of inspiration from stuff like Dark Souls with that, because I wanted to create this intimidating presence, this big knight that even someone like Artemis in the party wouldn't want to fuck with. And
You did a very good job.
I'm glad. In the end, like when I think of big intimidating knights that when you see, you're like, oh god, like the one thing I think of is Dark Souls, you know? Like that is Dark Souls aesthetic in a nutshell to me. And so I tried to create essentially a Dark Souls boss, a little bit like King Vendrick from Dark Souls 2, that I was just going to stick into that labyrinth there. And I'm really happy how well that turned out.
I will say it is something that I can't see working as well a second time this campaign though. Like it was as like having, as you put it, a survival horror esque. Like because I also got a little bit of a Silent Hill vibe, especially at first, because of you having like that psychic aura sort of thing, which is also a very interesting concept to go with. But the survival horror thing is something that you can't stretch out too much.
Yes, unless that's the entire campaign.
Yeah, well, because something like Call of Cthulhu, of course, the entire thing's pretty much survival horror. But
absolutely. But like if you're running like a heroic fantasy campaign like Raya, and then every session is survival horror, it's a little strange.
Or you start getting like some of the later Resident Evils where, technically speaking, it's survival horror up to a point, and then after that it just becomes just you blasting stuff away with like massive guns and artillery and stuff.
I'm looking at you, Resident Evil 6.
I was gonna say 5, but
5 too. Man, that's way off topic. But now I have to say it. Have you ever noticed that the Resident Evil 6 logo looks very suggestive?
Yeah, yes, I have.
Okay. I won't get into that. That's one of my favorite little things. But essentially, to my understanding, what we're here to talk about is take inspiration from things. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid of it. And I mentioned in a previous episode that more or less one of the first things I was taught as a DM was steal everything. And I want to make a little bit of addendum to that because as I have practiced and improved over the years, both writing and DMing, there's a quote, and I'm trying to remember exactly who it's from. I always forget. But if I remember correctly, the quote is, "Good writers borrow, great writers steal." And I would actually say the reverse of that. I personally believe that you should have no shame in taking inspiration from everything that comes your way. I mean, hell, I, I guess what, Fire Emblem Three Houses has been out for like what, 4 or 5 days now?
It came out on Friday, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought that game, and I think I've got like 35 different screenshots of things they've said that I'm like, well, taking that. It's just like little things. Where it's like, well,
yeah,
but
I can't even tell you how much writing I'm gonna do once I'm done playing.
oh yeah, it's just one of those things. It charges you. Don't be ashamed of that. Give credit. I think we said that before. But what, in my opinion, the great writers, in this case, great writers borrow, good writers steal, is that when you will find this time that you have reached a certain point that the stuff that you're writing is inspired by things and then mixed with your own imagination and weird little stuff that you want to throw around. And that's what I think that quote really means. Does that make sense to you?
I think I'm getting the gist of it. Yeah,
Huh.
it's one way to look at it. I mean, when of course, when you think of inspiration, when it comes down to D&D, of course you're going to have your usual suspects. Lord of the Rings, of course, always popular. I mean, depending on how much you're preparing for things, when the party first comes across their village of elves and you're not expecting this, you might just immediately default to, well, they're Lord of the Rings elves.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, in moderation, it can be all right, and so long as you sand them down a little bit and make sure they're not as rough as they can be, it should be fine. But even as Derek said, Fire Emblem is, well, Fire Emblem's a JRPG, but it's almost Western with how its tones and yes, Derek, yes, we know you're happy about that, but it's it it isn't your typical JRPG in that sense. Chrono Trigger is one that I've recommended to Derek, and that if he plays,
I'll get around to it. I've got it. I'm ready to go. I just have to, get out of the World Anvil competition, get moving, get out of college.
yeah, I'm not unfamiliar with the feeling, but so yeah, if we end up talking about magic civilizations as a topic that comes up,
Oh God,
expect
please,
that to be
yes.
after Chrono Trigger, and anyone, please don't spoil that
Oh,
for him.
oh, this is so good. No, I've gone how many years?
Well, as long as you've been alive, because
I
it's
know
older
the
than
main
that.
character's name is Chrono. I know there's a robot. I know Akira Toriyama did the art. I know the music is good. And I know it has something to do with time. That's it.
Yeah, I'm honestly really shocked that you've managed to be that spoiler free. But
Don't know.
but where I was getting with that is that you can, like, just because we talked about last time, what the sort of themes of them are, and just because you're not doing an Eastern campaign, the sort of stuff taken from
Yes.
Japan doesn't mean you can't take elements from that. And
Absolutely.
honestly, to a certain extent, you kind of have to, uh, for monks, especially
Yes.
especially Kensei monks, who kind of
Yeah.
really only make sense within the context of Japan.
Unless you're doing some really awesome flavoring, like I could tell you, if someone came to me and I was running like a real hard, like, Western European kind of campaign, and someone came to me and was like, I want to play a Kensei, I'd say, do you like The Witcher? And that would be, I think, a really interesting sort of way to kind of like play with that. You know what I mean?
I could get that. The reason why I said that, to be honest, is like I believe one of the base things you get when you go Kensei is you get access to calligraphy tools,
Yeah, which is a little
and I'm like,
strange.
no, that's a very samurai thing.
Yeah, yeah, it
But
is.
but so I'm like, like that's sort of the thing I looked at. I'm like, wow, that's a very nice attention to detail. But
It is.
holy hell, does that make flavoring this differently really hard? Because I mean, it's
Yeah.
monk in particular is very, because monks are very Eastern things, so it makes sense a lot of them have Eastern flair to them. But some of them, like, I mean, you could take away the four elements and make them the avatar, but
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just base fifth edition is usually pretty good about having everything being mostly, well, outside of the weaponry, but anything like that that's easy to convert. But nothing's usually too culturally locked, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree. So this is technically off topic, but I'm gonna make it on topic because since we have a half a normal length episode, and I'm gonna try to keep as much as I can on topic tonight. But you discussed like samurais and calligraphy and stuff like that, and it made me want to mention the fact that the reason why that happened, and this is something I don't know if a lot of people know, is that a lot of samurai in like feudal Japan and stuff like that were actually what you would call essentially nobles. They were
Yeah,
noblemen. And so they weren't just like, I am honorable and fight well with my katana and serve my lord. No, they were gifted in language. They were often very gifted orators. They could write calligraphy. They were really very much your average nobleman that was really good with a sword.
yeah, yeah. That's not inaccurate to my understanding.
The way I'm going to make that on topic, because technically that's just an aside, is inspiration. Talking about inspiration, this sounds stupid. Go to Barnes and Noble. You go to Barnes and Noble, they have these stupid carts out front, and we're not sponsored, I should say. They have these stupid carts out front all the time with like $5 books. And they are the books that my sister calls the crazy people books. And there's stuff like alchemy or like religious runes, or one that's on my shelf directly beside me, Code of the Samurai Bushido. And it's a beginner's guide to just understanding samurai and Bushido and stuff like that. And it's excellent because I came away from reading it, probably it's like a 5-hour read if you sit down and really blow through the whole thing, and you come out of it with so much knowledge on stuff and how like chivalry relates to samurai and stuff like that. And there's so many different topics for that. Like you can go out and you can buy a religion book, an alchemy book, and when it comes to world building, that is honestly for $5 some priceless insight. And I used to be the type of guy that was like, oh, I'll just Google it. You can find so much more in a bookstore sometimes than you can on Google, and that's something I wish I found out years ago.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I mean, the last time we went into a bookstore together, I ended up coming out with a. Did I end up getting the book on castles or on Greece? Hold on, let
I
me look real
think
quick.
it was castles. You were
It was
torn.
Greece.
Was
It
it
was
Greece?
Greece. It was
Ah, I
Greece.
50-50 and I was wrong. I mean, to be fair, Greece is amazing. Just for example, the Aristine Empire that's referenced frequently in the campaign is very heavily based off of Macedonia and Greece. I actually just sat down and wrote a whole bunch about the Aristine people today, and it's super Greece.
And my my character's home country, Peliad, is France.
It's it's
It's
it's Franstralia.
Oh God, I didn't know that you added Australia. Oh
No, it
no.
doesn't have Australian influences, but it started as like, well, actually, France America is better. It's
Okay.
France America.
Well, that's all right.
Well,
Then
you think about it, like they inhabited the place, they colonized it, and then there was an uprising. And
yeah.
then
Okay,
they
fair
got
enough.
established and started becoming their own nation, and then they fought each other. It's America with France.
Yeah. This is not an inaccurate description. Damn
I
it.
didn't realize it because I am, hilariously enough, being a world builder, I suck at U.S. history. And Janna sat down and just started vomiting U.S. history at me one day, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Fuck, probably that's America." It's just like one of those things. But anyway, please continue. I took us off topic very far, didn't I?
I don't remember what the original topic was now, Derek.
Oh, damn!
Influences. All right, there we go. Yes. But yeah, so as Derek did bring up, fantasy, isn't just the only way you can draw inspiration, and just from outright history. I mean,
Yeah.
well, obviously you're probably going to be drawing some anyway if you don't use actual gods with drawing on real mythology. Um, uh, but you can, like, even if you end up like making your own pantheon full scale, which is a lot harder than it sounds.
I tried. It's not worth it.
I know there are people that disagree with this, so I'm not going to say outright don't do it. But yes, it honestly does to me seem like way more pain in the ass than it's worth.
It can be.
But with that, yeah, just taking real history is definitely an option. Taking oh, I just found something amazing. Anyway, but yeah, just going like figuring out what you want your campaign to look like, and then drawing from like similar influence or even completely different influences that you just like a
Yeah.
bit of.
I was actually going to say that because, fun fact, literally right before this episode started, I was writing for a city in Araya in the Agalian dynasty, actually, so the party will probably end up there in the future, which I'm very excited for. That is called More Karoik, and I love it. And I was sitting there trying to figure stuff out for it, and before I knew it, I was writing very small scale, mind based primarily, like pretty much fantasy monorails.
Well, actually, those are already those are something that they added in Eberron.
Oh, well, I gotta look at that. But it was one of those things that, like, it was unheard of as of like 2 days ago in her eye. You know what I mean? And then this morning, it was just like, you know what? I like monorails. And does that have anything to do with fantasy? No, but I love it.
looks over Aglos.
Hey. God bless.
But yes, I believe I believe that's one of the things that, like, in the description, House, oh god, I just realized the irony of this, House Cannith is the one that runs those, I think.
Yep. That's pretty ironic. Oh my god. Okay, back on topic though. So
that was generally on topic.
The big thing for me is that, yeah, I guess that was kind of on topic. But the big thing for me is your world is your world. Go nuts and do not be afraid to draw whatever you want from all over the place. And the big thing is, because you shouldn't be afraid of that, you need to foster it. You need to nurture your imagination. That sounds dumb. Nurture your imagination, creativity. You have to. And the biggest thing that I recommend, and I will admit that I don't practice what I preach as much as I should. I used to every day, but you should be looking at, as goofy as it sounds, art every day. Just fuck it, like you have an idea for a mind city. Cool. Start Googling art, set up a Reddit account where you follow like r/imaginary landscapes, Pinterest. Oh,
that I'm legitimately on Pinterest right now, looking through stuff and like
Pinterest,
That
I call the like a disease of Google, to be honest. It's infected every aspect of that search engine, and I hate that. But God, it's useful. One of these days, I'm going to I'm gonna give up and I'm gonna make one. I don't have one. One of these days, probably after tonight's freaking episode, I believe. Watch it happen. I'll cave.
like, yeah, I will actually be honest. It wasn't until I started using Pinterest that because I talked about doing writing the campaign I'm working on right now for a while, but I hadn't made actually any real I'd had general ideas that I talked with you about, but until I made a Pinterest account, I didn't have barely anything written down. Not
No
anything that I
joke.
was still gonna. Yeah.
Just looking at art, making folders of it, downloading it, just absorbing that shit. That is a really, really good exercise in just nurturing your creativity. It doesn't matter if you're a dungeon master, it doesn't matter if you're a writer, it doesn't matter if you're an artist. If you want to be what the world likes to call a creative, do it. Just look at stuff, absorb other things that other people have done. And the big thing, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. I've gotten shit for saying it before. I probably will again. I'm sticking to my guns. There is nothing you can do that hasn't been done in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be disagreement with that, but I certainly understand where you're coming from, and I can't really disagree with it.
Exactly. And for some people, that's upsetting. Some people are like, I'll never be original. Don't think of it like that. The way you should take that, in my opinion, the way that I take it, is if what you do isn't going to be wholly original anyway, just do it. It doesn't matter. If for instance, and this is a little known fact actually, I'll add it to the world anvil later, but the jaunt in Akiad in my world is this system of portals that take people all over the place. Fun fact, it got the name The Jaunt after a Stephen King short story by the same name, which is about teleporters.
Okay.
They function entirely different. It's a different setting, it's a different idea. They're completely different things. The only thing the same is the jaunt and teleport. And when I first started doing that, I was like, oh, it's not original. Oh, it's not great. But I love the idea so much that I did it anyway. Don't feel trapped by these narrow ideas of having to make things yourself, because you're not going to. And that's okay.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't disagree. Yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
just
I'll stop hogging.
no, it's fine. I'd have a lot less to say about that than you do because yours is a hell of a lot more fleshed out. But I mean, this last week, what I've been working on and what I need to work on, I got distracted by Fire Emblem. I'll openly admit, hey, if you want to sponsor us, I'd be down for it. No,
Nintendo, please, no, call me.
That's not gonna happen.
No, it will never happen. But what I do have to say though, and this is at you actually, John, but it's for everybody. Don't feel like you're wasting time when you're playing something that's giving you inspiration or watching something or reading something, etc. Because in reality, it might not feel like it, but you're actually working on your world at that moment.
Yeah, I can definitely get where you're coming from there. I mean, there's definitely some stuff I'm not gonna be taking from that, but
Right. Absolutely. But and that was, I gotta say though, I both simultaneously love and hate that I'm playing through Fire Emblem and I'm like, holy shit, this has so much in common with Araya. You know what I mean? It's like the relics, the marks, the nobles, the regents, and I'm like, oh no.
I'm not gonna lie. There's a couple names that have been thrown around that one of them sounded a lot like Reagan Kairos.
Yeah.
I'm like, sweats and Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. It was one of those things. But I've got to say, it's made writing things easier because it's like I go write about my world, and then I play a game in a world that's very similar, and it's like, perfect.
I will say just this. We're probably not going to wrap up just yet, but I did want to say that my intention is, assuming things don't go to high hell tomorrow or this upcoming session, is we are intending to do next session on dungeon design, which is something that is going to be very much more Derek, to the point at which I'm actually wondering if about grabbing just a quick question or thoughts on the dungeon from everyone else before we go into that, because I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to contribute to that.
That's interesting to talk about.
Okay.
Oh, I said no. That's interesting to talk about. Sorry.
No, just because going from inspiration. See, I'll be honest, my my work on dungeons has been about nothing. Like I don't like, for the great irony of loving Dungeons and Dragons, especially more than Pathfinder, is is that I can't make dungeons. I can't do them. I can't make them.
No, don't say you can't. Everybody can. It just takes work. And there's nothing wrong with having a place that you're weaker at. For example, Matthew Mercer, greatly hailed as like the world's best DM at the moment, pretty much. You know, he's even on record, I don't remember where, saying his weakest point are dungeons. And that's okay. You know, like it doesn't matter. As long as everyone has fun, you know, that's what comes down to it. I actually broke with this dungeon I made for the party this past few sessions. I actually broke most of my dungeon making rules. So it's not a great example on a good dungeon. For instance, one of my dungeon making rules is pretty much, if you're gonna put in a puzzle, avoid them taking up too much time. Puzzle took a while. One of my other things is labyrinths. Not very fun, but because there was something wandering in the labyrinth, it ended up being a lot of fun. And the big thing, the big like preemptive thing I'll say, actually, you know what? No, I'll save that for next week. You'll find that out next week. I'm gonna stop myself right there.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I'll remember. I'm not gonna remember.
No, you aren't. I know you can't remember. You're not gonna remember at all.
No.
But we love you nevertheless.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, this ended up being very off topic, but interesting nevertheless.
I mean, to be honest, I'll be entirely honest. John brings me the topic for the game, the games. Wow, for the podcast.
Yes.
And yes, I'm just like, cool, I'll talk about that. And then I write nothing down and plan nothing.
Yeah, I thought I had more written down than I did, but then I was like, that's just off of that, that's just off of that, that's just off of that. Look down, I'm like, oh, there's like 3 things there. Oh. Oh no.
I've just been doing this for long enough that if someone asks me to talk about world building, I could probably run a freaking actual full-on seminar on it for a little while. So it's just one of those things where it's like, all right, Joe, what are we talking about tonight? Okay, yep, let's go. So half the time I come in here, and that's why I jump topics so much, is because I don't have like a thing that I'm looking at. I'm just talking.
I mean, that's good enough. Like, because we don't want
to. Maybe I should build myself an outline so I can stick to topic better.
I would say have an outline for next time. Well, okay, I would say definitely have an outline for next time, because that's going to be you carrying that bitch.
Okay, good to know.
As I said, that's the reason why I'm like, yeah, I should probably ask questions from other people and try and get some stuff, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm meant to be doing there.
I'll be in touch with you, and we'll talk about dungeons and stuff like that before next Monday, so we can get a little bit into that, and you can share some of your own insights from what I talk about. That being said, I don't know if I have much else interesting to talk about. Oh wait, you did say you wanted to do a quick aside relating to inspiration.
Oh, yes, bardic well, not so bardic inspiration, as it were. With with inspiration, something that I believe, where did you end up taking your inspiration rules from? Because I know resurrection rules are math, but I don't know where
I'm a
where your
bitch.
GM inspiration.
Mine is a hybrid. Mine is a hybrid of base and mats, because the thing, base is just like, oh yeah, you give advantage.
Which is
Uh,
pretty lame.
so I've done essentially like, I believe mats is a 1d6 to anybody who like, you know, like impresses me and stuff like that. So, and it's very rare that I do it. I always forget, to be honest. I'd like to do it more
you
often, but it slips my
you
mind very
you
frequently.
used to do it a lot more, but that is something that seems to have
Well,
dropped off a lot. I've noticed.
the big thing for me is, while I like DM inspiration, the big thing for me is that, to be honest, like, if you guys impress me with an idea, more often than not, I just lower the DC.
That's fair.
Like, if
I
you're
mean,
like,
that's
I'm gonna do this, if I'm gonna backflip off the wall and then punch this guy in the face, I'm like, okay, roll an athletics check, and if you do that, I'm interested, then maybe lower how, like, what you have to do to hit and stuff like that. So that tends to be what it shows up in, and while it's a little bit more back scenes, a little bit more benign, um, but that tends to be how I've been handling it, like, lately. But more than that, what I do is I just, like, it's strictly inspiration. I give a d6 or more depending on how like interested I am in the idea. I believe Matt's rules are just a d6 as well, but I know base rules are disadvantage.
yeah.
And I look, 5e is my drug. Like, I don't honestly think.
Snort it into my veins.
Yes. Also, um, oh yeah, but there's some things that does that I'm not a huge fan of, and one of those being inspiration, because if you're using like the grappling rules, you know what I mean, and so they decide to grapple somebody, and then they get advantage, and oh, you like what they're doing, so they also have inspiration. They don't, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference, and that's not that interesting. But that being said, I have to contain my laughter, because out of nowhere, Brain just sent me something that just popped up on my monitor and is really affecting me at the moment.
Oh
But
no.
do you have anything?
Oh no. Yes.
Do you have anything you'd like to close this podcast with, John?
Really, that just draw. Honestly, just from beyond what we've just said, draw from what you love. Draw from what you can, because, like, when you start getting into the nitty gritty of your world, things are gonna slow down. Things are gonna slow down a lot, and like, even when it comes down to writing, like, if you're a player and you're writing for your character, like, writing the generalities is super easy. Like, we wrote what Kane. We started writing Kane what 2 years ago, give or take.
Yeah.
Um,
God, wow, yeah.
which feels weird. But we didn't, like, really start getting into the nitty gritty until, like, less, a year or a little bit less ago. So just focus on, like, when you're making something, make sure it's something you love and that you can get ammunition for, you can get inspiration for, you can get something that makes what you're doing fun, because if it's not fun, it's not gonna be something either you're happy with or you're not gonna do it.
Right. I can't explain how many times I've started the campaign and then realized I didn't like what I was doing, and then just switched campaigns. It's not good. Find something you love, stick to it, Fun fact, I was supposed to be running a sci-fi campaign, but I didn't feel like I could do right by it, and so it didn't happen. And maybe it'll happen one day. But...
to clarify for him, because he's trying to dodge this. what was supposed to happen is Araya was supposed to be a temporary campaign, using already existing rules while he worked at a sci-fi campaign. The thing is for one, the third-party source book he was wanting to use ended up taking much longer than was expected, and so he was like, "What if we just make this a permanent one?" Which resulted in everyone scrambling to like make a better character and work on making things better, and is the reason why the world anvil's updating, because he's like, hey, it's just temporary. It doesn't have to be that concrete. Becomes concrete. Oh, well, I've made some mistakes.
Oh yeah. I think it's turning to something great though. But that is where we should wrap up.
Indeed.
Well, thank you everybody for coming out. If you have, thank you for watching the VOD if you didn't come out. And well, we hope to see you next Monday. Bye, folks. And as always, you want to say it, John?
Don't fuck up.
Ah, that's a good one. I like that one. Bye!